I have no.
I know.
Okay.
I'm getting that. Give me a second.
Guess what? I'm late. Ah, I'm sorry, everybody. I had too much information tonight. That was my problem. Breathe. I've put Doc into shock. Yay! There we are. Okay. We made it. I'm sorry, everybody. I'm so sorry. I did not mean to be late, but oh well, there was just so much. Hey, Matt, how are you doing? Well, I had a chat. There we go. Hey, Moo. There she goes. We're doing good, Matt. I just had so much information, guys. I just didn't know when to stop tonight. Hey, Krusty, how you doing? I'm so glad to see you, my Dune brother. I take it you had a good and fun trip on your bike. Good, William. I'm glad you just got here too. Yay, Sarah made it. I fell down a rabbit hole, which I do occasionally. I can't help myself, but I do. So, anywho, let's get started. And
ready?
Yep. Let's see, where are we? Okay, everybody. Welcome back. I love you all. And this is Trial Junkies United. I'm Z, or Trial Junkie, along with my ride or die here, Doc, who's probably aged maybe 10 years. You okay, Doc?
If I age 10 years at a show, we're going to be in trouble.
It's a good thing you're pretty. Okay, well, tonight we're going to cover a case. Well, we're going to cover two. I ran out of time, guys, but that just means Thursday we'll pick up on the other one because they're good. So we're going to cover a case about the crisis of the missing and murdered Indigenous women and girls across America and Canada. That's what you see a lot of times with the hashtag MMIW. That's murdered and missing Indigenous women. If it's WWIGMG, it's women and girls, or MMIP, just murdered and missing and murdered Indigenous people. And there are some other options too that they put more letters on. So, but those are the basic ones. So there is some violence in this one, guys. So just be prepared for it. Hey, JD, so glad you're here. I was late. I love you and Jax too. You guys mean so much to us. But we're going to talk about the case in Canada. I was supposed to talk about the one in Alaska first, but I got them backwards. It happens, you know? So anyway, there will be some violence because, you know, it is a serial killer and one you may not have heard of. So let's go ahead and get started. Now, this case, most of you have seen the red handprint. And I don't know if you know that it's a symbol often painted across the mouth that is supposed to rally the protests concerning the issue of the powerful symbol of the missing and murdered, you know, out there. This I didn't get put up there, so I'm gonna have to read it off my computer. But so it's standing for the voices of the Indigenous women and girls who have been silenced through violence. Okay. The symbol has really become a recognizable way to raise awareness about the disproportionate rates of violence that face Indigenous women and girls, because actually they're higher than anybody else. And I've had somebody ask me before, how can I support, find an Etsy store by one of the tribes or a member of the tribe, get your stuff through them. They sell sweatshirts, t-shirts, stickers, get that red handprint. It really does. It helps. It's because it's supposed to advocate so that we get more attention, and it's throughout. We're going to mostly be talking tonight about the Canadian case, but Alaska, sometimes we don't think about the Inuit people being Indigenous, but they are. So we have to think about that. So let's start with this guy. And this was in Winnipeg, Manitoba. And a passerby made a horrifying discovery behind some dumpsters, because there was a garbage bin that was filled with the remains of an Indigenous woman. And I can't even imagine coming across that myself. I'd be like, ew. But he got a hold of the authorities, and her name, let's see here. I want to get the. Okay, Rebecca Conchis, a member of Ochi Kapisi. I don't know. I probably butchered it, and I'm sorry, but that's part of the First Nation and Crane River. Okay. But what the investigation didn't know was that Rebecca was the fourth and final victim of this serial killer. Isn't he just an ugly, hideous person? Ugh, yuck. Cannot stand him. But this was the last victim, and he had been targeting Indigenous women for months. His name was Jeremy Skibicki, and he lived in a nearby apartment. That's the last time we're going to mention his name. I'm going to call him Thing 1. Thing 2 will be Alaska. This is Thing 1. He doesn't deserve his name to be out there. So we'll go to the next slide. I put my notes up here like this, guys, so I don't have to look down and read, because the eyesight's not what it used to be. But so anyway, when the police brought him in for questioning about Rebecca's death, it was really surprising that he confessed. And he actually, in the interview, if you watch it, after he had confessed to this and they were getting ready to leave, he asked them, "Oh, do you guys got to go?" They're like, "No, we can stay." And so they're like, "Do you have more to talk about?" And he said, "Yeah. Hey, spectrum of thoughts. Good to see you, darling. I appreciate you coming tonight." So this started this investigation into Rebecca's death and what was going on up in Winnipeg. And what we're going to see is the police screwed up. Shocker. Everybody hold on to your seats. Okay. So she was 24 years old, and she was a mother to a young daughter. And like many of these young victims, they get forgotten, and everybody just talks about the gruesome details, and that's sad, because we need to stand for them. They're the victims. We can discuss the case and we can talk about it, but let's remember who our victims are. And Rebecca was a beautiful person. A lot of these women had issues. They had addictions, homelessness. But no girl grows up going, "Hey, I'm going to get an addiction. That just sounds like a great thing," or "I'm going to become homeless." These are people that have issues, and there's things in their lives that cause these things. And sometimes it gets the best of them, and then they become the vulnerable that these kind of predators look for. So let's not forget, just because someone perhaps is living on the edge with their addiction or doing things that most of us wouldn't consider, because they need money for their addiction, does not mean they're not valuable. These are valuable women. They're beautiful people. They didn't deserve the life that they had. They needed help, but they didn't get it. She was known to be a very vibrant young woman. And that's what some of her family said about her. And then when they said Rebecca was full of life, and she had hopes and dreams because she was a mother, she was a sister, she was a daughter, And as they started piecing thing one's, confession together here, they found out they had 3 more victims. Now, Mercedes Myron was 26, and she was the mother of 2. And she was from the Long Plain First Nation member. She was last seen in Winnipeg's North End neighborhood, and she disappeared early in 2022. Morgan Harris was 39, and she was also from the Long First Nation, and she was last seen on May 1st of 2022. So we got a pattern here. It's all happening around the same time period, the same part of the city. And now these girls happen to be from the same nation. Rebecca was from a different First Nation, but she was from one of them. Okay. Now with Morgan, they said they had seen her near Main Street and between downtown and the North End. So they were all kind of in that same area. Now the 4th victim, she's unidentified years. They had no idea who she was. Even when her family was looking for her, they didn't think it was the police didn't think it was her, so they, didn't say anything.
Yeah. We need to ask your audience if your microphone is cutting in and out.
How's the mic doing, everybody? Is it okay? Am I cutting in and out?
Because you are on feed here.
Doc says I'm cutting in and out. Can I get a thumbs up? Can I get something? Can you hear me? Hello? Okay. Is this a better mic?
Okay. Yep. Okay. Let's try.
How's this one? Better? Okay. Hey, Trial TV Live. Good to see you, Aaron. So, am I doing better?
It sounds much better on this.
Okay. Moo is trying to participate. She's right in front of the computer. Okay, so where was I? Maybe if I hold still better. I was bouncing around there for a minute. Sorry, guys. Okay, so let's see, where were we? We were talking about our 4th victim and the community leaders, because they did not have a name for her, actually gave her a name. And I think we have a video. Can we play the video? And they're going to explain her name that they gave her. And this was one of the community. We're going to try this. We've never done this before. Always something new, guys. But the community elder, said that they had to give her a name. And so they did. And let's see what we can do. If we can. Moo, what are you doing? Let's see. Are you guys hearing the video? Something new. Gives me a chance to get a drink. Sorry, guys. Okay. You hear it? No audio? You're not getting the audio.
Oh, really?
Mm-mm.
Um. Okay. Don't know why, because I can hear it fine. Hmm.
Okay, I tell you what, guys, I will post the link in the description. But we'll go ahead and get back to our script. And I'm sorry about that. Something new. We'll figure it out. We usually do. Doc's smart about that stuff.
Sorry, guys.
Oh, she said select monitor and output. Erin's the IT queen. She'd know. Do you hear that, guys? Thumbs up if you hear it. Thank you, Sarah. Not yet?
Not yet.
Okay. We'll just go on.
Sorry.
That right there is the premier of Manitoba. He becomes very important. He's a very important guy that really helped with this case. So let's go back to the script. Can you guys hear me? Can you link to the Discord in the chat? I don't know. Well, Doc is busting his bum. I'm laughing a lot. Okay. So let's go back to that slide. I still have the
There
video.
it is.
Okay, there we go. Okay. So they gave her the name and it means buffalo woman. Let me see if I can pronounce it. I have a thing over here. Okay. Masho Baziki Akwiki means buffalo woman. And the elder, she explains it. They did a beautiful press conference. So if you get a chance to see it, I would recommend it. But so they believe that she was killed around March 15th, making her the very first victim. And they didn't have any idea who she was. They just had this zebra jacket that she had wore. And, you know, they had put up the flyers with the zebra jacket asking anybody if they knew, because I think if I remember right, it was like the brand name was Baby Fat or something. But nobody recognized it. And then Thing One, in one of his interviews, finally told them something about that she had been wearing a certain pair of pants, you know, when I guess he had assaulted her. And so they went through all of the evidence and they found him and they sent them off for DNA finally. And that's when they got her identity. And her name was Ashlee Shingoose, a 30-year-old woman from St. Teresa Point from the, I don't think I had that on my list. That Anish, I'm not even going to try what nation that's from. I'm sorry. I didn't get it practiced enough and I don't want to butcher it and be disrespectful. but she was the fourth victim, and it was confirmed in March of 2025. Now, this all happened in 2022, so it took 3 years to get her identity. And that just breaks my heart when I think about it. Okay, so his method of targeting this woman really shows what a predator he was, you guys. He specifically, of course, sought out the vulnerable. And he went to the homeless shelters in Winnipeg. And this is him in this picture. He's the dude with the bald head having dinner with, I think, victim number 2, which was Mercedes. And this is actually where he met his wife. And I'll get into that in just a little bit. But let's go forward. So he would go in there, meet these women, and then take them out and delete them. And he would bring them back to his apartment, SA them, and then delete them. And these weren't random acts, because he was actually going after a certain type of woman. He wanted them to be, desperate. And it's really disturbing how terrible this crime was. And also because he had such hate. He was a very hateful person. Okay. And then, let me see. Next slide, Boo. It's coming. Okay. So when they got on his social media, they found out that he was violent, anti-Semitic, a white supremacist. And this is surprising because his wife, who he met in 2018, this is before he became a serial killer, was actually in one of what they called warming centers, or homeless shelters. And she was a Métis? Okay, a distinct Indigenous people in Canada. They're recognized as one of the 3 groups of Aboriginal peoples, along with the First Nations and Inuit. They are descendants of the unions between European fur traders and the Indigenous women who developed a unique culture, language, identity, and that's distinct both from the European and the French, or the European and the First Nation ancestors. So they took things from both, and put them together and had their own culture. And yeah, you're right, William. He really brutalized his wife. They were only married a year. And she said that because she had an addiction, she felt like she was stuck with him. And he was a very sick individual because he really liked to keep her unconscious when he SA'd her. So he would drug her. Oh, Aaron sent an email for the sound. And he was also, he was describing himself as a member of a far-right organization that promoted racism. So you wonder if he would have stayed with her, if he would have gone on to murder these other women. And sadly, she blames herself, and it's not her fault. That poor girl, this man was so abusive. She woke up with him trying to, hey, the squeege of justice is here. And so it was terrible what she went through. And she did everything she was supposed to. She got a protective order against him, but she knew he was dangerous. And she told everybody that he was dangerous. But she said, I always thought I would be the one that he deleted. She never thought he was going to go out and do what he did, but she still has guilt. And at first they kept her identity secret, but she finally came out because she wanted to make sure that people knew that, what she had been through, because it wasn't easy for her. And she really was one of his victims. He just didn't get a chance to harm her, to the end. So this man was really violent and just a racist and hated, women that were Native or Indigenous. And the week before he was arrested, they hadn't talked in a long time because, like I said, she had got this protection order, and he reached out on Facebook to her, and he told her that what happened if what he was doing, that if he admitted, he would have to go on the run. So he wouldn't tell her what he was doing. He just said, if I tell you, then I'm going to have to go, hide. And so she knew it was something really bad. And so she said, I prayed that he'd tell the truth. And she did go and, she contacted the police. She ended up being a witness against him. And she had to wear the rose-colored glasses because that was due to a concussion. And that was an incident involving him that when he had harmed her. It's okay, Sarah. If you need to go get your glasses, I understand. Sarah's eyesight's not the best, I guess. Mine's terrible. The only reason I put this all up here, you can follow along if you like to. It's mostly just so that I don't have to look at notes, because otherwise I'm looking down. Okay, that's why I do it. Eventually I'll get better at bullet points. Doc's the king of bullet points, and he can talk on subjects. Me, I write things out a little too much. I'll get better. I promise, guys. That's my goal. So back to the story. He did tell her that if whatever he'd done, that eventually if he got caught, that he would come clean so that the families could have closure. And I just, it's like, well, that's okay. Nice of you. But while they found the partial remains of Rebecca, she had been in, like I said, the garbage bin. They later recovered at Winnipeg's Brady Road landfill the remains of Morgan and Mercedes. And that was a very challenging search. One, because the government didn't want to do it. The police knew that the remains had got taken to this private landfill. It's called Prairie Green. And they just were like, there's too much garbage there, because they realized that since the months after the murders, there was like 10,000 loads of garbage had been dumped at the site. So they're like, we're not going to do anything about it. We know where they probably are. And the families were upset because, these are their family members. And so they wanted something done. They had protests. They stopped traffic. Even the Trudeau had to come out and say something about, you guys got to let the road clear, and because the people were just, they wanted it searched. They wanted the remains of their loved ones. And as you can see there in the picture, it says search the landfills, because they knew that's where their family members were. So, because the police were saying, nope, can't do it. The families of Harris and Moran even got a protest camp near the landfill, which they called Camp Morgan and Camp Mercedes. And it was to get the, authorities to do something. But in Manitoba, when Wad Quinn became the premier, and that was the man in the picture I told you was going to become important, he was the one that promised them he would search the landfills. And he did. He started in 2024. And then, against the odds, they actually were able to find some remains in February 2025. And I owe this to Toxic Orchard. She had sent me the video and showed that the human remains were identified as Morgan Harris. And then in March, they found Mercedes. And the premier says when he was talking about Mercedes and Morgan, he said, they are coming home. And he said, but the remains of Ashlee Shingoose, they've not been found yet because they think she was put in another landfill. But the premier has said that when someone goes missing, we go looking and we will look for Ashlee Shingoose. And he promised her father, because when he had come out and he had tried to find his daughter, the poor man, but when they had the press conference, he was so broke up when they finally had identified his daughter. He just couldn't make it. But he did call in, and it was, it was unbelievable, and it just really, it warmed your heart that the premier has said that he's going to keep looking. They don't know if they'll find anything, but they're going to look, So thing one went on trial, and then that is his lovely defense team. And these people, this dude went in there and confessed to everything, right? So they decided that they would say that, well, he wasn't criminally responsible because he had a mental illness. He was schizophrenic. It wasn't his fault that he, went hunting for victims, found victims, took them to his apartment, did awful things, deleted them, put them in the garbage. He was schizophrenic. I didn't know that would be an issue, so, but the judge rejected the defense. He was like, no, he's guilty on all first degree. So he got on July 11th, 2024 is when they got him for the first degree murder of all 4 victims. And during the trial, because at that time, the 4th victim did not have her name yet, Ashlee. They had a table that the prosecutors kept the symbol of a buffalo headdress on a red cloth so it could be seen, because that stood for her, because that Buffalo woman was the name that she had been given. And so that was really amazing that they did that. And it was good to see that the judge didn't fall for the I'm schizophrenic, I can't be held responsible. When thing one was found guilty, Rebecca's family held up a large photo of Rebecca as they left the court. And when they were asked why, she said, because we as First Nations people are not statistics. Every single one of us has a name, a family that misses us dearly. They're part of a tribe. They belong to everyone. And that was one thing the tribe that actually had given her the name Buffalo Woman said, she belongs to us too now, because we took her in. In August 2024, he was sentenced to 4 terms of imprisonment to be served concurrently with no possibility of parole for 25 years. Hopefully in 25 years, they still won't let him out. Canada is not as tough, let's say, as the US on court cases. I mean, for Canada, this was a strong, term that they gave him. Because sometimes you see these cases and it just seems like they just get a pat on the hand and say, off you go. But he has to serve 24 years, William, before he's even eligible. So hopefully by the time he's eligible, the family can go in there and say, you're not going anywhere. Krusty, you're right. They could take care of things in prison. That can happen. So we don't know. But the murders of Rebecca, Mercedes, Morgan, and Ashlee, it's a much larger pattern. We have to stop and think about the violence that is happening against the Indigenous women and children. And in Canada, it's 12 times more likely to be murdered or go missing than any other woman. And that's according to 2019 inquiry that they termed this pattern of genocide. In Winnipeg, which is near numerous different communities, it's even, a bigger number. And they said they have the highest number of missing and murdered Indigenous women in Canada between 2018 and 2022. And I'm sure COVID did not help those numbers, but those numbers were high before. Hey, therapist, good to see you, sweetie. Glad you joined us. But that's something to think about, is that these are people that need to be, mentioned. They need to be remembered. The way people ignore them and the way the cops just, we're like, yeah, we're not going to search for these people. You can't, it's just, it breaks your heart when they do this, because it shows the systematic failures that happen when they don't even want to go looking for these women, because all 4 of these women disappeared in just blocks of each other around the same time period. They were notified that these women were missing because their family members were looking for them, because they said that, even though these women were homeless and had some issues, they would contact their family. Just because they don't live in a house down the block from the family didn't mean they weren't in contact with them. And it said annually the reports are 9,300 in 2022 missing persons reports. So the thing I really wanted to focus on, though, is that the story of these 4 women, it's just not about their death. We want to think about their lives too. Spectrum, you're right. He did target them because of their vulnerability. He knew that they were out there and they were easy to become victims. But it's a fight for justice for these missing women and girls. So we need to remember them, that they're not just statistics. They're sisters and daughters and mothers, friends who are loved and deeply missed. And this is the part of the highway that they were found on. Or no, that's Alaska. That's the Alaska case. We're not going to go into the Alaska case because it's a long one. We'll do. Ooh, Christy got home an hour ago. You must be exhausted. Did you have a good ride? I know you're going to be gone for the weekend. Yeah, well, because the next case, this dude in Alaska, he's another winner, guys. But let's do him Thursday. We'll pick back up on him. It's interesting, but it's really sad. But Emily Pike's murder, the little Apache girl from Arizona, she's really brought to the forefront the missing and murdered Indigenous women and girls. We hate that has to, be what brings them to the forefront. But you know what? We have to at least be thankful that people are thinking about them. I know when they had one of Emily's memorials, one of the tribes in Alaska had a memorial up there for her. The Ogallala Sioux in South Dakota had a memorial for her. It wasn't just the Apache Nation. It was all different tribes. We're sending people to her memorials. We're having them in their places because this is big. Arizona is close to passing a law now that they're going to have an Indigenous alert. Sadly, it's only for Indigenous people that are 18 and over. Supposedly, the Indigenous children are supposed to be covered now under the Amber Alert. They weren't for a long time because they said their some political thing as to why they weren't, but they got a bill passed that the children were. The reason no Amber Alert went out on Emily, though, was because she had been in that group home and she had run away before. And sadly, they didn't even tell her mother for a week. But because of her tragedy, now people are focusing on some of these others. In South Dakota, just recently, Savannah Standing Bear is missing, and she is 22. They said the last sighting of her, they thought, was in Rapid City. So, that's someone that, I put it on Twitter or X or whoever you want to call them. And for some lovely reason, they decided to cover my my posts as having graphic pictures, and it was her poster, her missing poster. It showed her tattoos. Hey, Doc, there you go. He's running. But nothing that would be considered, scandalous. So if you want to if you want to see it, you have to click on it. Hey, LaDonna, so happy you made it, darling. So you have to click on it to show you what the missing poster looks like. It's ridiculous. They made me mad. And of course, because I don't have a paid account, it's hard to, tell them that, they got it wrong. But that is one of the cases recently. There's another one up in Canada. So anybody that's in the Canadian area, and hey, the way people travel, you never know. There's a young girl named Lakeshia Holloway Red Crow. Beautiful young lady that's only 20 that is missing. She's was last seen on April 5th at in Calgary. So there is a great site up there called Aboriginal Alert, Canada's Indigenous Awareness Network. And truthfully, that's what they need to get here in the US. They need one location to get all these people, so when alerts go out. I don't understand why every state has a different alert system. They should just make a federal one. Let's just do it easy, I don't know why they have to complicate it. You have an Amber Alert, it goes. Silver Alert, we know, is for older people. They have alerts for people that are have perhaps mental issues or intellectually challenged. Let's do that. Let's get something. I know at one time they were talking about the alert there in Arizona. They were going to call it the turquoise alert, which would be fitting, but it should be nationwide. It shouldn't just be one area. I mean, that's just, to me, it's ridiculous. Let's see. Yeah, I agree with you, Krusty. The breakdown in jurisdiction is insane. And that's part of the problem, is the jurisdictional issue. Because it is sovereign land, the feds still have the right to go on it and investigate major crimes. In fact, that's why some of these, therapists, JD DeLay, that's who she's talking about. JD DeLay. Everybody loves JD and Dax. But no, it's federal land, but that's why they were having problem with ICE when they first started this immigration thing. A lot of the natives were getting pulled over. Hey, OnlyFan, my vampire friend, I'm so glad you're here. But yeah, so they were holding some of the native people, and some of the ICE agents were being really snotty. It was just ridiculous, telling them that, where's their paperwork? And it's kind of like, well, how long have your forefathers been here on these lands? Let me tell you how long mine have been here. Let's have a conversation. But a lot of these federal agents that do work on the reservations, you would think if they know the area so well, we wouldn't have so many of these young women and children that go missing. It's like, what's going on? I mean, tonight we talked about there in Canada. It turned out to be a serial killer. Thursday, we're going to talk about another one that was in Alaska. But yeah, let's find out what's going on. Be aware when you're out and about, because there's too much trafficking going on. I know one of the Indigenous groups I follow is really concerned about Sturgis this year because it's the 80th anniversary. And they've had other years where Indigenous women and children, some of these Indigenous girls as young as 12 get trafficked into these events. So if you see something, say something. We can't just pretend we don't have a clue anymore. We have to stand up and say, you know what? If I see something, I'm going to go tell somebody. Because a lot of times, even if you approach someone that, let's say, has been trafficked, they're not always going to come out and tell you they have. You don't know the abuse they've been put under. We don't know the threats they've been put under for them, not only them, their families. And that's something to think about, because a lot of times they will stay there with the abuser because they don't know what to do. It could be they're young, they're just too abused. We know even abused women, they say sometimes it can take, maybe 8 times before they finally can get the courage to leave. So if you see something and you say something, tell the authorities. That's not snitching. When we're dealing with children and women that are put in these positions, that's not snitching. That's helping someone out. And we got to get more people talking about the tribes and the Indigenous women that are being deleted, because it's just not right.
Thanks, William.
Oh, William, I'm sorry. I know you've had a hard time too because your girls were gone for the first time. I know. You're right, Sarah. There are things we can look for if something's off. And we'll get a list together. I know some of the things you look for is bruising and, are they eating? There's different things. Oh, William, I didn't know you had lupus, sweetie. I'm so sorry. That's tough, darling. I'm glad you came, though. We really enjoyed having you. Sarah, you're right. Demeanor. If they're looking around, if they're afraid to say anything, if you ask them a question and they're looking for someone else to answer them, that's definitely something to take into effect. Surprisingly, I had read a statistic that talked about how many young college girls end up getting trafficked by their supposed boyfriends. So there's things, sadly parents constantly have to be aware of and worry about. Matt, you're right. Others not letting them talk or answer questions. Do they not have any money? Do they not have their ID? Someone's, keeping their ID from them. That's another one. So, these are things to be looking for. Any of the good hints we can get, That's what it's all about. But when we do have these cases, as much as we want to tell the story, we also want to focus on the victims, not just on the person that perpetrated them. That's why Thing One no longer has his name in my book. We got rid of it. He doesn't deserve his name. Because some of these, creepy creeps think they're, going to be in some book of serial killers. No, you're just Thing One. You don't deserve that. You took vulnerable women and you were just terrible. Okay, there's that one behind the back hand sign, that signal that's been going around social media for a while that can help too. Yeah. I know here and I think it was down or up in Dallas, they had a 16-year-old that got walked out of a basketball game a couple of years ago. She was there with her dad, and I don't know how that guy got her out of there, but he did. And they found her, states away. So sometimes it was interesting. I was listening to Crime Weekly with Derek Levasseur and Stephanie Harlow, because I've been a Stephanie Harlow fan from the very beginning. She was the one that really got me going years ago and on YouTube. I'd been true crime for eons. I was raised that way. My mom was into true crime. But on the YouTube, it was Stephanie Harlow that I started watching. And then when her and Derek Levasseur started Crime Weekly, but he was talking about he had taken a family cruise. He's now, I guess, going through a divorce. So he had his two girls and some of his family was there. And one of the girls needed to go to the restroom. And she was like, Dad, I can go. It's just out and around the corner. And he goes, no, I'll go with you. And one of his relatives made fun of him. Like, you're such a helicopter parent, kind of a comment. And he goes, because Derek had been a police officer. Now he's a private investigator, and now he's into true crime. And he goes, I've seen too much. I would rather get up, inconvenience myself to go and, walk her to the bathroom to make sure I don't become one of those parents that I can't find my daughter and something bad happens. Because I think we've all heard about terrible things happening on cruise lines because they have people from all different areas that work on those cruises. Sometimes they have false IDs. They don't do good background checks. Okay. Oh, Spectrum. I grew up watching Detective Files, Forensic Files episodes. Yeah. Yeah. So when you watch that stuff, you are a little more cautious and you just want to be protective. And like he said, I would rather be inconvenienced that I have to stop my conversation just to make sure that my kid comes home safe, that nothing happens to her. And that's a good dad. And it's really sad when someone tries to kind of shame you that, oh, you're being a helicopter parent. No, I just don't want my kid on the news, Yeah, I agree, Sarah. We just need to slow down a bit and look around. Put the cell phone down. You don't have to walk and text and talk and, look at your surroundings, see what's going on. Oh, my alarm just went off. Tell me to wake up, but I'm already awake. Okay. But yeah, you're right. We need to slow it down. Let's take that phone off our, let's put the earplug away or the headphone away. And we don't need to be texting constantly. Because surprisingly, now for the younger people, you might not realize this, but we used to leave our homes all the time and never have a phone. It's a miracle. You didn't call every time something happened. I remember our first cell phone was actually a bag phone for the car. And we got it at a garage sale. That was funny. It was huge. I remember when my boss got his first cell phone. Remember that, Doc? We worked for the same guy. He had this big phone, and then he had like 3 batteries. So
huge.
Oh yeah, and he was always the batteries you had to plug, get them plugged in so they could charge, and it was crazy, but okay, guys, I guess I will wind this up for tonight. Thursday, we will go ahead and find out. Wait till they find out about pagers. Yeah. Doc had one of those.
Yep. Every half an hour.
I can remember back when I was trying to get a hold of him. I paged you, I don't know how many times, and he'd just laugh. Oh, Lord. I tell you, these kids need to be locked up with a rotary phone, a map made out of paper, a clock with the arms and the numbers. They don't need to go to one of those, what is it? They have those rooms where you can, try and destroy the room. No, here, we're going to give you some things and see if you can figure out how to get out of the room. Yeah, stick shift. You know how I learned to drive a stick shift? Because I learned to drive when I was 11. I mean, my mom was like, hey, let me teach you how to drive, kid. So I learned to drive an automatic when I was 11 years old. But I was about 18 when I learned how to drive a stick shift because I'd never had a stick shift. So, I didn't know how. And I wasn't going to have my mom teach me because by then she was excitable. And so I had a friend that had a 14-year-old kid and he was raised on a farm. And so Grady's like, I'll teach you how to drive one. And that's the best way to learn because truthfully, he could have cared less if I dropped the motor out of that car or not. He didn't get excited about anything. But in one afternoon, I learned how to drive it. Yep, that's the way to learn. And the worst, though, I had a friend that had the thing on the steering column. What do they call those, Doc? The shift thing on the steering column.
Shifter on the steering.
No, there's a certain term, a something tree or something. Karen and Gary had one. Oh, now that was hard. It took, because by then I'd learned how to drive a stick shift. I was used to that, but that thing was, I hated that car.
To be when we were young, you had a stick shift. You were part of the cool group if you had a stick shift on the floor.
Yeah, I like the stick shift on the floor. The one on the steering column, that wasn't for me. I had more trouble with that thing. Matt, you're right. Most kids would be lost.
Mom and Dad's vehicles were on the column.
See, Doc always teases me because I keep a list somewhere of all of my password or my codes for my computers and stuff. Because he has a list, but he keeps it somewhere that's on his computer. I'm like, no, I keep a paper list because what if something happens? I need, something happens to the computer. This way I got my list. And I still keep an old time calendar. I'm sorry. I just like to write things down. Helps me remember better. Oh, Lord, that is funny. Squeegee's just, okay, nothing but a stick shift here. Okay. Yeah. Well, now we got the truck and, he's got a big truck, a 4x4. That's because we live close enough to the beach that, there for a while we were going to the beach at least once a week and we could go out on the dunes with the 4x4. Haven't done that in a long, well, haven't done it since COVID though. Oh, you guys, thank you all for coming tonight. I love you all. This has been awesome. Thursday night, we're going to talk about Thing 2, because he's only going to be mentioned. His name's only going to be mentioned once, and then he'll be Thing 2. Oh, I know. Doc makes good vegan meals, LaDonna. I tell you, he made vegan pizza last night. And Sarah, I got to get you the recipe. I know.
It's black beans and rice.
Black beans and rice. Black beans and rice tonight. Sounds good to me. I love you all. I will see some of you in Trial Chat tomorrow on Trial TV Live. If anybody has any cases they want looked into, hey, email me. William gave me one, and I got to delve into that. Yeah, I like to dig. As you can tell tonight, I got down that rabbit hole a little too much. But thank you, everybody. Have a good night. I will see you on Thursday, and I love you guys. Night.